We'll go ahead and get things kicked off here. So, hi there. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen and I work for Horizon Credit Union. Today I have with me Philip Hansen, a representative from Horizon Retirement and Investments. Thank you for joining us, Phil.
Good to be here.
We will use a participant guide throughout today's workshop, and the link for that was in your event invite, and it's also in the chat if you didn't get that. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat and we will get those answered. Most people plan on saving for or want to save for retirement. Sometimes it's difficult to know where to start or what your options are. Research shows that most families do not have enough savings set aside for retirement, including those approaching retirement age. If you have started saving for retirement, that's great. This workshop can help you determine what else you may need to do to make sure you can reach your retirement savings goals. Beginning to save is important, and making sure you know how much to save is important too. Let's look at the agenda for the workshop and learn about some of the topics that we'll cover. In this workshop, we will examine the factors you should consider when planning for retirement, learn how to estimate your retirement expenses, identify the saving and planning strategies that will allow you to maximize your savings at any age, compare the types of retirement plans available to you, and set goals for your own retirement savings. Click the raise hand button if any of these apply to you. How many of you have started saving for retirement? How many of you have thought about a retirement plan? How many of you have already enrolled in a retirement savings plan, either through your employer or on your own? How many of you know what's in your retirement savings? Excellent. All right, well, saving for the future is easy to put off in favor of other, more immediate spending needs. The result of postponing it, though, is that many people don't have enough saved for the financial security and stability they need when the time comes to retire. Wherever you are in your retirement planning, it is not too late to develop or refine a savings strategy. Now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Phil, who will handle the bulk of the presentation here.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate it. I'll give you a quick introduction to my team here at Horizon Retirement Investments. This is an investment program offered through CUNA Brokerage, and I'm the guy on the left in those three pictures. And I love this picture because, as you can see, it's about 5 years ago when I was a lot skinnier and didn't have gray hair. But I'm refusing to let them update that picture because I like my younger self. So the things we do, mostly I specialize in retirement planning. I'm a certified financial planner. And I would say about 80% of all the assets I manage are retirement assets. So it's a primary focus of mine to help people get on the right path to reach their retirement goals. And then once you do hit that glorious day where you're retired, now we need to manage those assets so that you're not running out before you die. And so that's a big part of helping people get to retirement and then also through it at the same time and enjoy retirement. So we'll talk about a lot of those different strategies today. The first thing I would say, you need to consider your retirement, consider where you're at. And Jen, if you want to move to the next slide there. Whenever we start a plan, we start by determining where you are today. And the next thing we look at is where you want to be in the future. So what are your goals? What does your retirement look like to you? So I often ask people to finish this sentence. When I'm retired, I would love to fill in the blank, right? Because your retirement plan is going to be designed to reach your goals and your dreams. It should not be when I'm retired, I want to have lots of money. That's not going to cut it as a plan. You need to know if you want to travel the world and go through Europe and Egypt and everywhere else, or do you want to do a lot of fishing and sit on the back porch with your dog? Both are equally admirable, but they cost a lot less or a lot different. And your goals need to reflect that. And your plan to get to those goals need to be appropriate. So start where you are today. Then where do you want to be in the future? And then how do we get there? And the big question is, am I on track? So number one, look at your income. Look at what you're bringing in. And second, look at your expenses. Within your workbook there is a budget page we'll talk about in a minute. But as long as your income is more than what you're spending, then you're already step one into reaching your retirement goals because you've got extra money that you can save and invest. Next question is, what's your health? And the reason this matters is because people are living longer than they used to, and they underestimate how long their money is going to need to last. And so if you think that everyone dies early, so I'm planning on running out of money at age 78, once you hit 79, now what's your plan? Nobody wants to move into their kid's house, right? That's not part of your retirement plan. I'm certain of it, and then your daughter's saying, as long as you're under my roof, you got to obey my rules. Nobody wants that, right? And then I've heard this one 1,000 times that says, when I run out of money, just take me out in the backyard and shoot me and bury me in a hole. So for the record, it is always men that say that, and nobody's going to shoot you and put you in a hole. So your plan needs to be able to consider your health and the longevity of your life. How long do we need this money to last for? And then the last thing is consider your current tax bracket and your tax situation. There are pre-tax retirement plans and there are post-tax, like a Roth. Maybe you've heard of a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. Those are post-tax plans. What is the right one for you? Again, there's not a cookie cutter answer to this. Most plans are individualized, so you need to consider where you're at, what makes the most sense for your retirement plan, and then we begin to build on it from there. So what does it look like? The value of money. How much money do I actually need in retirement? All right, so you're no longer working. To have financial security, you need to have the plan, you need to implement it, and you need to start as early as possible. So let's turn to page 9 of your participant guide. I want to take a look at that because page 9 gets you a starting point. This is where you're going to start to set those goals. At what age do you expect to retire? A recent study showed that about 37% of Americans plan on working till age 70. And they're starting to think, I'm going to work longer because I haven't prepared for retirement. The reality is less than 15% of those people actually can work till 70. Usually their health gets in the way and doesn't allow them to work as long as they thought. So what age do you want to retire at? Are you trying to retire early at age 62 or 66? So that needs to be a start. And then again, how many years will your retirement last? That's a really nice way of saying, when are you going to kick the bucket? How long do we need to make this money last? Then we take a look at your current income and we can analyze how much money you need. And the rule of thumb is that you need about 70 to 80% of your current income. So that's what we want to look at is if you know what you're currently earning, then we can figure out how much you're going to need to sustain your lifestyle going forward. So let's look at that next slide. So the next part is pretty, actually, let's go one more. It's a pretty straightforward calculation at that point. Once we know how much you need to consider and reach your goals, then how do we get there? Well, obviously, we start investing. And this is where the value of time comes in. So the earlier you start, the easier it's going to be to get there. But that doesn't mean that it's too late for you. So whoever's on this call, it's not too late for you, but it is important to begin right away. So this shows a real simple example of money growing over time. And let's say you had an individual that had a retirement goal of $600,000. And they've done the math and they said, okay, I need $600,000 to last for my lifetime and reach my goals. So it's going to take, if we don't consider compounding interest, it's going to take an 18-year-old $12,245 a year in savings to reach that goal. And then when they hit that goal of $600,000, they begin to withdraw and spend that money, and that's going to fuel their retirement paycheck for the rest of their life. Problem is, if that same person waits until they're 50 years old, they need to save $35,294 a year, which is a pretty hefty price tag for your retirement. So you can clearly see that that value of time is so important to get started. You need to put aside a lot less the sooner you begin. This again doesn't take into consideration compounding interest. We'll talk about that as well. But the sooner you start putting in, the more money you're going to have grown over time. So I call this particular slide that you're looking at the coffee can plan. This is if you just shoved money in a coffee can and it didn't earn any interest, how much are you going to need to put aside? So let's take a look at a more realistic situation when we include compounding growth. So the next slide shows the value of compounding interest. And this is looking at that same individual that wants to hit $600,000. If they achieve a 6% average return, then that same individual, instead of having to put in a little over $12,000 a year, only needs to put in $2,198. So they're adding to the retirement plan, but with the value of compounding interest, their money is also putting into the retirement plan. So you can only make so much money. You're going to be limited, but your money can make money as well. And if you can get your money working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, adding to your plan, that's how you achieve these much larger goals that may have seemed unattainable otherwise. The same 50-year-old that needed to save over $35,000 a year would only need to save $21,000 a year. Now I say only save $21,000 a year. Obviously, that's a lot of money to hit that particular goal, which is why the power of time comes into effect. One thing you'll notice on this chart is the last 10 years is where 60% of the growth happens. So compounding interest takes time to really play a major toll. It'll get to a point in your life when your money is adding a whole lot more than you could ever add. And that's a beautiful thing. That's when we celebrate and we know that we're really getting closer to that goal. But it doesn't happen early. The compounding effect is it's kind of modest at first, and you've got to be disciplined and stay with it, and it will pay you off in the long run. So part of starting where you are today, you might need to adjust your goals. You might need to adjust how much you save. You might need to adjust how you're invested to reach that end goal. But people always ask me, since I am a licensed stockbroker as well, they always say, should I be buying or selling right now? Should I get out of the market because it's overvalued, or is it time to get in? And the answer for most people is timing the market doesn't work. Trying to guess if, say, the stock market's going up, down, or sideways, it's a complete gamble. Nobody knows. It doesn't matter if you're a professional or if you're not. We don't know, but what we do know is timing the market doesn't work. Time in the market does work. The more time you have in there, you're going to have that long-term sustainable growth. So let's go to the next page and take a look at the next scenario. Here's Joan's retirement. And if you go to page 3 in your participant guide, you'll see this. So I got a question here for you. Go to your participant guide. Go to page 3 and look at these two different charts. All right, so Joan begins saving. She puts $100 into a retirement account, and she starts adding $50 a month, and it's earning 10% interest compounded annually. So the question is, and type your answer in the chat, which of these two charts is accurate? How much money is Joan going to have over this period of time? You look at chart A and chart B. All right, so hopefully you got this right, but the answer is chart A. So what chart B is showing you there is how much money Joan actually put in. That's her money. And over 40 years, she's put in $24,100 of her money. So we call that her cost basis, but that's how much she set aside. But because of that compounding growth, it's worth $270,000. So you can see most of that money comes from that long-term growth as it's compounded on top of itself. Now you may say, Philip, can you get me 10% interest rates in today's interest rate environment? The answer is no. You're not going to find a savings account or a CD that's paying 10%. That doesn't exist right now. But a diversified growth portfolio can achieve similar returns. They're going to have some element of risk, and we'll talk about different investments. But the stock market, the S&P 500, the last 40 years since 1980 has averaged 11.8% per year. That's its average. Take out 1% for fees, and you've got yourself around that 10% compounded growth. So that kind of gives you an idea of it is possible, but no, you're not going to find a 10% savings account right now. So let's go back and talk about where's the money going to come from. So Jennifer, move forward to the next slide there. So now you've retired, you hit that day, you told everyone at work, see you later, but I'm not really ever going to see you again, and you're free. Now, where is your paycheck going to come from? And in my experience, and I've worked with a lot of people and seen them through their retirement, that is the biggest worry, is that in 2 weeks from now, I'm not having a paycheck coming in. How am I going to make this work? And so here are the sources of income that are going to come in from in your retirement. You've got your personal savings, that money that you've been setting aside. Many people have an employer-sponsored plan. That's going to be your 401k. Maybe it's a 403b or a 457. Usually starts with the number 4. IRAs, Roth IRAs, pension plans. There's things like that. You're going to have Social Security income. That's going to be one of the biggest sources of your income in your retirement. Then you'll have investments you've set aside. Maybe it's a rental property, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and maybe there's other sources. Maybe you become a part-time Uber driver, or you're going to get an inheritance. There's royalties from the family farm, something like that. But these are all the different sources that in your plan you need to consider and take into account. What do you need to be doing to build up certain areas, and what's going to be paid to you, like Social Security? I do want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Social Security. So is Social Security even going to be around for you when you retire? There's a long answer and a short answer. And the short answer is yes, Social Security will be there when you retire. And then maybe you've heard Social Security is going to run out. The answer to that is yes, that also is going to happen. So there is a trust fund. And as of right now, the trust fund has about $2.8 trillion into it. What happened is for years and years, we were paying our Social Security taxes, we're paying into Social Security, and it was growing faster than we were withdrawing from it. So it was getting bigger and bigger. Then we hit this turnaround point where all the baby boomers started to retire, draw on their Social Security, and then we as a nation are having less kids. And so there's fewer people paying into it. So the trust fund is now getting smaller. It's at $2.8 trillion today, and it will be gone in roughly the year 2037. And then the trust fund will be at zero. So at that point, is Social Security going away? No, because right now we're paying in about 76% of what's required. So if no one fixes Social Security, if it never gets fixed, your Social Security benefit will be reduced by 24%. It'll go down to 76% of what you were promised, and that's how it'll be. And that'll be good for another 75 years. Then the numbers, it's a little too far in the future for us to calculate any further than that. But you're good to go. You'll be dead by then. Now, will it get fixed? I believe it will, but it's a very unpopular thing to do. Fixing Social Security requires you to raise taxes and increase the age at which people can draw from. And no politician wants to do that until they absolutely have to. And so, yes, Social Security will be around. Absolute worst case scenario, you're going to get a pretty hefty haircut if no one fixes it. So just to address that. But these are the sources of income that are going to come from. The ones we want to focus on are what you have control over, and that's your retirement savings. So if you look at this, there are two things you can do. You can save and you can invest, and those are different things. Saving money doesn't have that real growth opportunity. Investing does, but it involves risk. And so you need to incorporate both into your plan, make sure they fit with your risk tolerance, but they're also in place to reach your goals. And so the number one thing about this is to pay yourself first. You've probably heard that 1,000 times. It's easier said than done. It's very simple, but it's not always easy. So you got to make it a habit to set aside money for yourself. If you go to page 10 of your participation guide, it has a budget. Actually, page 8 is the budget. Page 10 talks about saving and investing. So here's a couple questions just to ask yourself. Have you already made it a habit to save money on a regular basis? Every time a paycheck comes in, is something going into your 401k? Is something going into an IRA? Is something going into your savings to build it up? If it's not, do you plan to do this? And if you're planning to do it, when? You know, what's keeping you from doing it right now? And the second question there is investing. So investments help you increase your value over time, but you need to diversify those investments. You need to manage the risk and make sure you're investing wisely and you're not gambling with your retirement savings. So the next question is, are you participating in a diversified investment? Are you already doing this, or is this something you plan to do? And if you're not doing it right now, what are some of the things that you need to learn or to do to get you started on that path? So those are some really good questions to ask yourself from that participation guide. But those are two things you need to start. Start saving, start investing. And then how do we invest? What should I be putting my money into? So here are some different types of plans that you have. The employer-based plan, 401ks are very popular. 403b plans are as well. If you want to know what the difference is, a 403b is a nonprofit organization and a 401k is a for-profit corporation. And it just so happens that it's section 401, paragraph K of the tax code. There you have it. You learned some useless knowledge today, but then there are also pension plans. They are dying out. Most people don't have pension plans anymore, but those are all your employer-based plans. Most plans nowadays within their 401k, they offer a Roth option. And the Roth is after tax dollars. And that's part of that decision. Do I participate in the traditional 401k or the Roth version if your company provides it? And then the IRAs, these are your individual retirement accounts. These are ones that you can participate without the help of your company at all. They have pros and cons. In the IRA, you can invest in anything you want to, but there are limits. So you can only put in $6,000 per year if you're under the age of 50, $7,000 per year if you're over the age of 50. So you can't save as much, where with the 401k plans, you can contribute a lot more, up to anywhere from 19 to 24,000 in your 401k plan. The beautiful thing about employer-based plans is many times a company will match your contribution. So if you put in 5%, they might put in 3%, and that's free money. So when you're looking at the different types of plans that are available to you, you want to look at all the options. Make sure you know which plan is right for you. If you're adding to an IRA and that same money, if it went into a 401k, would have been getting free matching contributions, you need to maybe consider how you're saving and what's the best way to go. None of this you have to do alone. So I should point that out. As a financial advisor, this is what I do is I help people look at their options and make recommendations on the best plan to start putting their money into. So plans, I often compare a plan to like a grocery cart. You got to put something in it. The plan itself is not an investment. The plan is just a holding account. You actually have to put investments in it. And so knowing which plan is the best one for you, for your tax purposes, for the way you can save is important. But then the second follow-up to that is, what should I put in my grocery cart? Should it be all donuts or should there be some vegetables in there as well, right? And so the next slide talks about the investments that are available. So the first and one of the most popular that people think of is stocks. And so stocks is when you own, it's equity in a company, it's ownership. So if you buy 100 shares of Microsoft, you are now a part owner of Microsoft, just a very small owner. But that's how it works. The value of that company can go up and down. It's a bit speculative. And those are your high risk, high reward investments. When a company does well, the stock price goes up. The stocks often pay dividends, and that's how you make money. Between all of these, stocks obviously have the highest return over a long period of time, but also the highest risk. Bonds are a loan. So you're either lending your money to a company or to the government. So when we talk about the government bonds, treasury bonds, that's you lending the US government money. They're going to pay you back plus interest. The bond market's actually bigger than the stock market, and it's typically for conservative investors. And so the last thing you have is mutual funds. And mutual funds is a basket of investments that a lot of people pool their money together. And so you have a large fund, maybe it's a $2 billion fund, but only $10,000 is your money. And your money is being spread out among multiple investments. And mutual funds, you can pick everything from aggressive mutual funds, moderate, conservative funds, and everything in between. They've gotten very specialized. So one thing I've been doing a lot of lately, people are asking for socially responsible mutual funds. And these are mutual funds where the money managers will only invest in companies that they believe are socially responsible, whether it's taking care of the environment, treating their employees fairly. What are some of the different track records? If they're in the firearms industry or the oil companies, they may not be in these socially responsible funds. Maybe they will be, but you can really tailor your investments using mutual funds to suit your goals, your risk tolerances, and your timelines. Within a 401k, they always use mutual funds. So that's what you're using in a 401k. And the majority of people that are saving for retirement are doing it through mutual funds, because you can take a small amount of money and get diversified across a large spectrum of investments. So again, the investments are what you put into the plan. So make sure you have the right plan first, then pick the right investments for you going forward with that. And the last thing, and I kind of mentioned it once, is risk management. If an investment goes down and you're getting heart palpitations and your hair is falling out, you might be a lower risk investor. And even if you're supposed to be in a high risk investment because of your age, if you just can't stomach it, then you need to really take that into consideration. Because the last thing as an advisor I want is, if the market goes down, for you to sell everything on the downturn. And so you need to know a little bit about yourself. If you're thinking you're a high risk investor and the market goes down, are you disciplined enough to stay in it and ride it out? Or are you panicking and you're going to get out? And if you know that about yourself, you can design a portfolio that you're comfortable with. And sometimes we call it sleep insurance. You can still sleep at night knowing that how you're invested is not going to be beyond your tolerance for that. And I would say that's one of the biggest things when you work with the financial advisor, to make sure that the person on that side of the desk understands your true risk tolerance. Because a lot of times you're a lot more conservative than they think you are. So you got to always make sure you're on the same page. Make sure they're asking good questions, but make sure you're being upfront with how comfortable you are with risk. High risk is going to give you the best chance for large returns over a longer period of time, but in the short term, experiences the biggest swings. And they're certainly not for people that are older in life and closer to retirement. Should be avoiding high risk and should be more moderate to low risk. But if you're young and you're 21 and you got lots of time to recover and lots of time to invest, then rule of thumb is you should be higher risk in your choices of investments. Okay, let's talk about maintaining your plan. Here's a question. I want you to raise your hand if you've ever said these. So number one, I'll eat better after the holidays. All right, that's me. I will only eat one chip out of this bag of chips as I sit here on my couch, right? We always have these good intentions. I'll wake up early tomorrow to start exercising. I'll start saving for retirement when I get that next raise, or when I get this car paid off, I'm going to start saving because then I'll be in a better position to do so. I'll go to bed early tomorrow. I'll stop watching after this one last episode. Or do you stay up till midnight binge watching something? I'll borrow less on my credit card. I think the thing to remember is that I think we all have really good intentions on what we want to do, but then it's the discipline to first create the plan and then to stick to that plan. I think that's often why when you get a plan in writing, if you have it written down and written goals, that will help you stay true to those. So let's go back to our participant guide real fast. Page 12. This is talking about maintaining your plan. Making the decision of when you want to do certain things and how much you're going to do. So decide when you want to, or you're going to be able to retire. Do you already know this? Or is this something that you still need to work on? Is it realistic for me to retire at this point? Determine how much money you're going to need. Do you already know this, or is this something you need to still get done? Set goals with deadlines and create reminders. Have you already done this, or is this something you're going to start doing? So I think it's really important for you to go through this particular workbook and start reflecting on what you've got done, what you feel confident doing by yourself, and what you might need to employ a financial advisor to help you along that path. So obviously that's what I do. There are a lot of financial planners in the area. So reach out to someone that you can trust and start using them to help you fulfill those goals that you have. We all have good intentions. We all want to make these, things happen, but we have a reason for putting them off. And I think for a lot of people, it's just they don't know where to start. They don't know where they should be going. So let me go back to our slide here. So let me go in summary, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. I went a little faster than maybe we had time for. So we got lots of time for questions, and I would love to answer some of those questions for you. But again, look at those different things of when planning for retirement, what's important. Consider your age, consider your goals. There was one of my favorite lines from the book Alice in Wonderland. Whether you've seen the movie or read the book, it's the same line. So Alice meets the Cheshire Cat, the big grinning Cheshire Cat. And she asks Cheshire Cat, which way do I go from here? And so the cat responds by saying, well, that depends a good deal on where you're trying to go. And Alice says, I don't know where I'm trying to go. And so the cat says, then it doesn't matter which way you head. And it makes total sense. If you don't have a goal, if you say, I'm just kind of going through this, really doesn't matter what you do because you have no goal in mind. And wherever you end up, you just have to be happy with. But in my experience, people that haven't planned and set a goal for their retirement, they're usually not happy with what they end up with, because this is something that takes discipline. It's not easy. It's simple, like we mentioned before. It's simple, but it's not easy. So get those goals in place. Do the calculations as far as how much money you're going to need in that retirement, and then begin implementing a plan that's going to get you there. One thing that most financial planners will do, I do, is something called a Monte Carlo simulation. And a Monte Carlo simulation, it takes where you are today. We run through thousands of what if scenarios. If you continue on your path that you are today, and we use some calculus and some fancy math, but what is the probability that you're going to be successful if you keep doing what you're doing? And I do these all the time. And sometimes the probability comes up and says, you've got a 95% chance of being successful. And that's fantastic. You're right on track. You should have no problem meeting your goals. It's actually impossible to get 100%. There's always a what if scenario in this life where things don't work out the way you want. But out of thousands of scenarios, if 95% of the time you're meeting all your goals, you're good. And I've had sometimes a particular couple, they wanted to retire early at age 62. And I ran the scenarios and it said, you've got a 30% chance of being successful. And they said, okay. I said, no, that's not okay. That's not a good number. We don't want 30%, because if the stars don't align perfectly, you are not prepared to retire at age 62. So then we propose an alternate plan of saving more, working maybe a couple extra years, or spending less in the retirement. So the goal can be modified to make it realistic so you can reach your goals. Consider how you're going to do it: 401k, IRA, Roth versus traditional, and then maintain your goals, maintain your plan going forward. So that's what I have for you today. And I think we do, Jen, if I'm not mistaken, we've got plenty of time for questions. Am I right?
Yes, we definitely do. If you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat and we will make sure to address them. And we'll move on to a couple more wrap-up slides while anybody's getting those questions typed in. We want to thank you, first of all, for joining us for today's Financial Training Ground pop-up. And we'll show that slide again for Horizon Retirement Investments. If you'd like to get in contact with those folks, the information is on your screen, and I'll pop a phone number up on the next slide as well. So here we've got, if you'd like to continue your financial journey, go ahead and call the Washington Horizon Retirement Investment Team at 509-755-3060 and set up a no cost or obligation meeting with Philip Hansen to review those financial goals. If you're out of the Washington state area, go ahead and call that same number and we'll go ahead and get you in touch with your representative. And don't forget to explore the Horizon Credit Union Financial Training Ground for free with interactive guides on a variety of financial topics. The middle link in the screen there, or even create a personalized financial education playlist at the bottom link. Let's see if we had any questions come through.
I'll address something if we're looking for any questions. One thing I mentioned I would talk about is the difference between a Roth and a traditional. So this might be confusing for some people, but a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k is after tax dollars. So what I mean by that is you earned the money, you've already paid taxes on it, and then it went into your Roth IRA. A traditional IRA or a traditional 401k is pre-tax money. So the money hasn't been taxed yet. You earned it. Uncle Sam didn't get to tax it. It went straight into your retirement plan. And the reason why it matters which one's different for you is the Roth money, it's already been taxed. So as it grows over time, When you withdraw from it, it's going to be tax-free. Now, there are some rules. You have to be 59 and a half, but by and large, that money is going to grow completely tax-free. With the traditional IRA, you haven't paid taxes on it yet. So that's the benefit today, is you get to postpone taxation. But as it grows over time, when you withdraw it, you're going to pay taxes then. And everyone's different. Everyone's tax situation is different, but I have kind of a starting point. And I usually tell people, if you're under the age of 50 and you're making less than $200,000 a year, you should really be considering a Roth IRA. So that's just kind of a starting point. Then we can tailor it to there. And the reason why is because the more time you have for that money to grow, like we saw on the one slide that shows that most of the money in there is compounding earnings and growth, you may have got a tax break on the $24,000 that you've been putting into there, but it's now worth, that one slide showed $270,000. So you're going to pay taxes on $270,000 and you only got a tax break on $24,000. That's a traditional IRA, traditional Roth, or I mean a traditional 401k. On the flip side, if you did a Roth, you paid the taxes on the $24,000 when you contributed, but all the growth, as long as you waited till 59 and a half, was tax-free. So the lion's share of that money you get out of the plan without paying taxation. And that's why it's a big deal to consider it. But if you're in a really high tax bracket today, and maybe you're a little bit later on in life and you don't have as much time for it to compound and grow, then the traditional might make more sense, because you're in a high tax bracket today, but when you retire, you might be in a lower tax bracket. So why pay the taxes today in a high bracket when you might be in a lower tax bracket in the future? So those are why you consider it so much. I'm a huge fan of the Roth. I don't have a crystal ball, but if I were to take bets on if tax rates are going up or down in the future, my bet would be that they're going up. And so even if you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in the future, that may not be the case. So really consider what makes the most sense for your plan, traditional versus Roth. And if you don't know, again, talk with an advisor, make sure that you're not just going about this guessing, but you actually have done an analysis, make sure it's right for you.
All right, that is excellent information, Phil. I know that's always a popular subject, the Roth versus traditional. And I don't see any questions that have come through the chat yet. So if you think of anything afterwards, please feel free to email us. You can email us at community@hcccu.org, and we'll make sure to get those answered. And thank you so much for hosting, Phil. That was terrific information and excellent next steps. I know I feel more prepared than I did even, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you folks for joining us today. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot those through to community@hcccu.org and we'll get them answered for you. Thank you. Have a wonderful